Are you going to ask questions?
Yeah, I'm right over here while I read the news.
Oh, shoot, I meant to
By the
charge
way.
you that.
It's the Pentagon press briefing room, audio test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the Pentagon press briefing room, audio test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Everybody good?
One more time.
It's the Pentagon press briefing room, audio test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Everybody good?
Thank you.
Okay.
Who's going to be today?
General Rodriguez.
General?
Mm-hmm.
Tom, is that mic live from this point?
Yes. Thank you. The room is hot.
It's actually a little chilly. Just kidding.
That's good.
It's a softball.
Hi, Eric, it's Worth. I'm over at the Pentagon. I've already checked the level and we've checked the color. Test, 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 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Test, 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 1, 2.
2468.
Everything good? Okay, I haven't done that yet, so thank you. All right, see you.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
What, do you think he's got Ebola? Isn't it at 11:30?
Yeah. They're gonna have some samples here, so it's created some disinterest.
Maybe they're putting on their contamination.
Oh my God.
There's always somebody who tries to be the comedian.
Only here when I think.
No, it's.
Oh, boy.
Time to get, shoot your 3 stills.
Good news is that the one thing that's going on, there's news that's not close to something.
He has a heart attack, guys. You don't get a picture every day. It's like the mayor of Ebola from Syria underneath the ribbon. That was the greatest picture because he's like this, you know, with scissors in his hand.
Oh,
And
he's trying to-
everybody behind him is like, it was a great picture. Well, I think we need to the phones. No, I mean, that was the urgent time.
No, it's always there.
You know, they're usually
10%
more here.
doesn't make a word. In this case, is the whole West Coast.
10% or doesn't only apply. Or just 1%.
Yeah, or they hazmat suits or what?
Hazmat suits?
It was in Nebraska, what, Peter?
Oh, you saved the seats. Thank you, Gary.
It's easier for me to get a shot for you.
Oh, don't worry, I don't wanna be in. Where should I sit so I can be in the background of MS?
All you have to do is like stick your head behind him while I'm asking
Just give them the peace sign behind that.
questions.
Do that, we can photobomb elections.
Yeah, well, of course. We prefer it.
Looks that way.
Hey, get down, please, and walk on a camera.
I was,
Yeah, that's me, all
seen
right.
by somebody, like, gossiping with Helene while some, I don't know if it was Barbara or Jim Shudo from CNN.
Asking the question.
Yeah, they were lingering over the cutaway.
You got a problem with cutaways?
I don't, I moved, you know what, I moved my seat for your cutaway last time.
Okay. Is it cutaway?
Dan.
It's people listening, like you're sitting
They asked me to scoot back
Yeah.
6 inches.
Sleeping.
You could get your
make 'em look more
wonderful
important.
visage.
Boy, this thing is just packed.
You don't think it's gonna fill in? Take that one. Why do you think
He was gonna move closer to the camera.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, perfect seat. Where you gonna focus? Perfect seat, absolutely.
Told you I did well under pressure.
Telling you, man, you're doing great. Oh my God, Mick's here too.
Don't get him.
Hey, nice tie.
That's good, just get my pass.
Good logic. Was that, yeah, tie like that, they should have given you a
Did you
bonus.
send me one yet?
Because Terry retired, so we can,
No, I'm gonna remember it.
Space heaters after all.
we can use space heaters, fax line,
Good
coffee
time.
coffee
Give me a little bit of time.
machines, bring in your water.
Beautiful. Just like that.
Has
Okay.
anyone actually done it?
So I can see it, I can like
So
draw you a
I
map, but I
want
don't know
to
the name of it.
survey, not from Terry, but somebody else, like
I can get you there.
a dope
Hey,
with
good
coffee
spot.
in, and then I spilled
But I'll remember it.
all over the rug.
Here?
Not in this room,
In the
but
other
in
one.
another.
we had to do.
Oh, I got it, I know it.
The test now would be coming in 3
I'll write it down for you. It's called Club
All those
Columbia.
parties they've had here with the wine and stuff.
No,
Yeah,
Terry out the first time.
Columbia.
it's not the first time, every time.
I can't.
And it's right across the street from the Andino shopping center. Which sounds a lot nicer than it is.
Is it Andino A-N?
Andino. You know what I'll do is I can make it I'll get the address.
Okay.
So I can make sure it's the right one.
Hey, everybody.
Just in case they open up another one.
Check, see how late we're running?
What?
Not if, how.
Kirby's gotta brief him up.
Arm wrestling them together.
That's right.
Nudging him
Kirby's
toward the
like,
door.
just
He's
let
like,
me do it, just
Sir,
let me.
I'll give
Does
you,
anybody know if any other co-coms
I'll
are,
lay it out for you. Just to
Our
clean up.
co-coms are
any
what?
of the co-coms gonna do anything? All the other guys were.
He certainly won't stand like
The only way you could ever count on is like safety. Over.
Is that possible? So does this guy.
But he's only do a 2-hour
Whitewater ass briefing with us, where you quote, take every question and show what real transparency looks like.
standing on
Next question.
this high. Yes. And we aired it that way. Of course.
To get over and then
Because he's got it.
cover this. He's the only other one who ever.
Oh,
He does it.
That's certainly working.
He doesn't make a lot of news, so you know, get a briefing. He knows, he knows his area, I mean, he knows what he's not like a, he knows what he's talking about.
I hope a commander goes with their target.
He knows, I mean, you don't know until you know.
He had been besieged by all the camps.
What's the king of the
I hate to do this, but yes. When are you leaving?
Thursday?
You're back on Wednesday? Is your first round Wednesday?
I won't.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys.
And the place just roared, and all of a sudden, we were
You know, you should go to the...
everybody's underwear. Everybody was throwing their shorts at it.
There's the one that does coffee shop.
It was
They're
hilarious.
really, really good. Really, really high quality coffee.
Is it really?
They actually happen to sell that coffee here in DC.
How many?
IEDB or...
He's on the phone, getting an
I think
update.
it's a lot cheaper there.
Only the latest cookies.
No.
Making lunch reservations.
You would like me to?
It's a nice present from Columbia.
What, you're gonna say?
And
You know, I
remember a lot of it's like, a lot of the stuff they have is like emeralds and gold and things like that.
Tim's reminded me of that. Yeah, all over town.
I checked out
Emerald, amazing
in
emerald.
LA.
They're hard as
This is
gold.
many years ago when I was still at the Wings.
They're hard as gold.
And I turned on
They're really cool, like Inca-inspired
and they have
jewelry shops.
this White House station up on camera, but
Kind
nobody's
of like really
filming.
cool.
But it's critical. And the camera guys are really
Nobody's on the show. Nobody's.
Nobody wants to
get out. Tell them. So they ran out and hear them. And then you hear somebody come up and go, no, no, we're not doing it. And they go, what?
There's a new guy.
And then all of a sudden, they take the audio of the show. But I was like, it was embarrassing, but it wasn't a career killer.
It's like, what, came up many times.
What would Alex Wong do?
Exactly.
So what do you got today?
You're no Charles Durham.
Got this, and then
Who is? But who is?
Staten Island.
I know.
which one? Healthy?
Yeah, well, I'm surprised.
Oh, that's Japan. Yeah, it's a defense official, right? It's a background.
Putting a base on those islands? A gun emplacement.
I love it.
Do you know anything about the Kobani, Kurdish? Oh, really? Yeah.
You might be an hour or something. You might be. This way.
I read in the press that the attorney said.
I don't remember the time so far, but I do. It sounds right about
Oh, that's right.
Well, it depends on your definition of phone.
I really like it. It's kind of cool. It's for 9 years. Like really fun. It's not.
See where we are.
There's really no storage. Columbia. They did. It's okay. Why not? The problem is like aid is so low now. It's almost not a story at all. Military in Columbia is just not really part of their. No, I know it is. I know it is.
You're right. Think back.
Columbia is the best. I'm just saying I went upstairs and we were there.
By night,
Yeah. I know. Can I get that? No, even if Missy were here. I'll give you Where? Well, the problem is with the turnaround. That one is a quick turnaround. It's not the question.
Oh, yeah.
back so that
Little better.
Never.
Right, that's what I
somewhere in there. And so he suggested it wasn't so big.
The only problem is right now is really what right. They were like, I think it's so big awful pieces. The problem is like Vietnam went up there with the same kind of revenue. And then I mean, I don't think that he actually makes that. So I don't think he's accurate. I just think it's a stress test.
You know, but we don't raise
Oh yeah, I mean like the world has been writing about it. I'm with you. That's our story. Never had
welcome, Jimmy.
Killed the head of our and then all the like the world's top stories. Oh yeah.
A single phone blows up a pickup truck and kills 3 guys. Three guys in a 50 caliber machine gun in the back of their Toyota Tundra, and then Buzz and Viper and Brock all go supersonic.
I don't know. The only time I have
$1.5 million top on.
which is whatever it is. He gave him like a
Or even better,
foot long, like butterfingers.
hey, we did the police department. For the technical guys, they're looking at this as a public affairs. They're like, well, shit,
Over
because it was technically Iraqi government property at the time we blew it up. Then you call the general counsel's office and say, yes, sir, PHO office here. Some guidance from you guys right away on how we're going to do this.
I know, and this one is like more
well, and so then she leaned over, and she leaned back, she said,
it's not very.
she said, I'm a mother, not a chance.
I'll bring it back.
But it was a miracle. I didn't, the kid, he was crazy. He was waving him, looking at him. I'm going, oh my God. And I'm thinking, is that what you really want to get the kid to 7?
Yeah.
Which is really kind of a foot long thing.
I mean, not for your truth, but everything else.
There's a point at which it's
Yeah, you're still here. I mean, I guess it depends on the person. Some people can have like. So, I'm traveling to. Well, yeah. Oh, you have.
I think they used to play.
No, I don't. Okay.
Yeah, so. Yeah, a week ago.
It'd be fun, but I can't.
Yeah, what is
Everyone asks that, you know, just taking.
We were way far out. It was a great restaurant, but I don't know where we were.
No, it's a
Remember, it was a long
That's something for me, like, good friends, really good friends. They're really good friends. We never leave. They never leave. They don't have like
well, I want to preserve
pizza, whatever.
so just having
I want to see my happy present. So it's things that
I love that.
and it's really on the board. I mean, you did
You're looking at the reticle from a 20th century see a man driving.
I might have taken it for a sample. I might have taken it. I might have taken it. That's my favorite.
Okay,
I always go there. It's all Colombian restaurants.
Yeah, so
There's moments where you're just like,
and you're still delicious.
I was standing in the phone book.
yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah, on our staff, we
Literally, it's everything. Colombian food is fine, but they have a lot of, they have everything.
Morphine drip updates every day.
My other question is why have Paul in the video? How about that?
That's a great question.
They should have a
They should have something like a
yeah. How about
You're live on
GoPro on the nose of the, you know,
Just kidding.
It should be in color.
just think they could add like another $1 million to the price of
There should be much more pixels.
Where's the HD GoPro?
I mean, it's like a little more. It's like we're back in
I
1992.
don't know what's happening.
That's like Colin Powers doing this.
Oh, you
What I'd probably say is that
They need to improve the video.
I mean, you might be sitting over there.
You wouldn't respond to questions like
We should just write the
Someone needs to analyze that.
I mean, absolutely general.
Maybe they are.
No.
But the Washington Post put the wrong photo.
They don't want to delegitimize.
Kobani.
Yes.
No.
Having another person.
I think we'll be all pretty much about the.
I mean, if you had
Can you ask about airbags in Syria?
Yeah.
you could try.
they were like, sorry, our reporter was confused.
If you wanted to get an answer.
Yeah, that was something you
Yeah. If you want to come back. Sure.
Did the failure to engage the moderator micro 2 years ago into this massive?
You know, a lot of people say timid, half-hearted measures. And look, the extremist micro.
No. I felt I already read it.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm proud to welcome into the briefing room General David Rodriguez, Commander of Africa Command. He's here to give you an update on U.S. contributions to the effort against Ebola, U.S. military contributions to the effort against Ebola in West Africa. And with that, sir, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
By the way, I'll moderate, and so I'll be choosing you. We got 30 minutes total for this.
Okay, well, good morning. Good to see you all again. I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to you about how U.S. Africa Command is supporting the comprehensive U.S. government effort to help contain the outbreak of Ebola in West Africa. As you know, the President considers containing the spread of Ebola to be a national security priority that requires mobilizing our collective resources to enable the success of the international effort. Recently, I discussed the progress of the response with the President, who underscored the pivotal role of American leadership in containing the epidemic at its source. In support of the U.S. government effort, the military focus is on providing logistics, training, and engineering support in conjunction with the greater interagency effort. We stood up a headquarters, Joint Force Command, United Assistance in Monrovia, Liberia, to provide regional coordination of U.S. military support to the U.S. and international relief efforts. Finally, we placed 2 additional mobile medical labs into operation last week, significantly increasing the capacity for rapidly diagnosing Ebola. We are also establishing a facility capable of training healthcare support workers, enabling healthcare workers to safely provide direct medical care to patients. Now, this is very important, and I want you to help us to tell our families and the American public the health and safety of the team supporting this mission is our priority. Let me assure you, by providing pre-deployment training, adhering to strict medical protocols while deployed, and carrying out carefully planned reintegration measures based on risk and exposure, I am confident that we can ensure our service members' safety and the safety of their families and the American people. As we deploy America's sons and daughters to support this comprehensive effort, we will do everything in our power to address and mitigate the potential risk to our service members, civilian employees, contractors, and their families. Preventing the spread of Ebola is the core task of this effort. This is a key requirement in everything that we do in this operation, and this applies both to our support efforts and the protection of our own people. The professionals of Doctors Without Borders have a remarkable record of safe operation in their fight against the spread of Ebola. We have looked at their procedures and consulted with the U.S. Agency for International Development, the Centers for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, and others to develop our protocols based on known risks and prudent planning. We are taking the following steps to ensure the safety of our people. We are implementing procedures to reduce or eliminate the risk of transmission to service members as they go about their daily missions while deployed, including the use of personal protective equipment, hygiene protocols, and constant monitoring. So again, let me assure you, by providing the pre-deployment training, adhering to strict medical protocols while deployed, and carrying out carefully planned reintegration measures based on risk and exposure, I am confident that we can ensure our service members' safety and the safety of the American people. In the end, our equipment, training, procedures, and most of all, the discipline of our leaders and our force will help us to ensure that our team accomplishes the mission without putting our nation and fellow citizens at risk. And as I said before, stopping the spread of this disease is the core mission here. We are focused in all of our efforts to accomplish this, both by supporting the international effort and by keeping our own people as safe as we can. And with that, I'll take your questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'll moderate. Please identify who you are and who you're with when you ask the question. Start with Lita.
General Lolita Baldor with AP. There's been some questions about whether the response to the overall crisis has been too slow. Do the troops that you have now, are they enough to get the job done, do you think? Or do you think in order to move things along more rapidly and construct some of the facilities more quickly, do you think you're going to need more troops there? And secondly, do you have a cost estimate yet on the military response?
Well, first of all, one of the challenges, as you can imagine here, is continuing to gain and grow situational understanding over time because of some of the isolated places that is creating problems. So we're supporting the USAID efforts to do that. And right now, the leadership has approved up to almost 4,000 people, as Admiral Kirby talked to you about. And we have a lot of flexibility to put people in there as they're needed and who's needed. So I think right now we have the sufficient capacity and numbers to do that. The speed at which these things are done is it's not just one challenge with doing that. Part of it is the ability of the host nation to absorb it. As you can imagine, their infrastructure and their capacity to house people, to feed people, and all that is limited. So it's all going to have to come in a very, very carefully orchestrated based on that. These mobile labs are very, very important because, as you can imagine, some people have malaria, some people have the flu, and it's really important to find out who you have to treat and who you don't. So we've already flowed 2 more of those in that are already having a major impact, and we have several more on the way to better adjust it. But again, that wasn't what we expected when we got the first mission. So I think we have the right flexibility and ability to adjust as needed, ma'am.
Cost?
The cost estimates right now are probably around $750 million for our efforts, and that's in about a 6-month period. And again, the challenge with doing that is that those labs, for example, were not in the current, in the initial plan. So it's going to have to be a free-flowing, flexible adjustment on all that, ma'am.
Jim Miklashevsky with NBC. General, will any U.S. military personnel be involved in the direct treatment of any Ebola patients, or in the training the healthcare givers? Will they be come into contact with any Ebola patients?
No, now the mobile labs are different, but no for the majority of the force. The mobile labs are testing people, okay, and some of them will have the Ebola virus. Now, those are trained at the highest level of something like nuclear, biological, and chemical. So they're all trained at a very, very high level. And they've been, the one from Walter Reed has been operating there for many years, for example. And the two that we just deployed meet those standards of training.
Do you have any numbers of those who will be involved in the lab operations, and what kind of protections, what kind of protocol will they observe? And if any U.S. military personnel should contract Ebola, what is the protocol there? What happens?
Yes. First, on the numbers in the labs, they're between a 3 and a 4 person team. We have 3 labs deployed right now. We will probably deploy several others. So it'll add, one lab adds 3 to 4 additional people. And again, those people are trained to the very highest level of operating in a nuclear, biological, chemical arena, and they get tested continually, and they're the ones who are testing all the people. They will be the primary ones that come in contact with anybody. On the second point, if somebody does contract Ebola and becomes symptomatic, they will be handled in just like you've seen on the recent ones who came back on an aircraft that was specially designed to bring them back, and they'll go back to one of the centers that is specially designed to handle the Ebola patients right now.
So they'll be returned to the U.S.?
Yes, they will, yes.
Jennifer Griffin, Fox News. Sir, will U.S. Armed Forces personnel be working side by side with Liberian troops as they build these emergency treatment units? I thought we had been told that they would be separate from the Liberian forces. Is there a risk of contamination by working closely with the partner nations' troops? First question. And do you have enough of the personal protective equipment that you need, or is there a shortage of that? And have you stockpiled any of this ZMAP, the treatment that was given to the 2 missionaries that had been proven in case troops are exposed to the virus?
We have people that will be working with and observing the other people who are building the ETUs, whether it be the Armed Forces of Liberia or contractors, to ensure that they're meeting the standards and oversight. That all the people who are doing that are tested and meet all the medical protocols to ensure that they do not have the disease. And then the continual daily checks are also a part of it. So all the people that we're working with go through those medical protocols. On the last point, on the virus, we do not have that stockpiled. And right now, that is, you'll have to get the expert opinion of the CDC, but that's still to be determined whether it's effective or not. And they have a date in the future when they may be able to tell whether it's effective or not. So we are not stockpiling that. And last, we have sufficient personal protective equipment for ourselves, and we will continue to make sure that's the way throughout the process.
General Andrew Tillman with Military Times. Can you tell us a little bit about where these 3,000 or 4,000 service members will be housed, and can you give us a little bit more information about what kind of personal protective gear are we talking about, what kind of hygiene protocols are we talking about, and what kind of monitoring is going to be done on a daily basis?
Yes, for the majority of the people, they will be in places like the Minister of Defense or some of the military posts that are out there. Some will be over at the airfields and the locations where people will be flowing in personnel and equipment. We will have trainers that are in a training facility, and most of these places that are in and around Monrovia are actually in buildings. The people will either live in the Minister of Defense areas, or they will live in tent city type procedures where everything will be taken care of for them, to include their food and water and those things, because you have to watch all that obviously at these points. And then on the protocols that occur in a daily monitoring, mainly it's built around the multiple washings that you have to do with your hands and feet and everything else. I mean, when you go in one of these Ebola treatment units, you're going to wash your hands and feet multiple times. You're going to get your temperature taken in and out, and then there is a checklist of things to ask each personnel based on the virus or any other sickness, quite frankly, that could be coming up. Okay? It's just like a self-questionnaire and a checklist. The personal protective gear, the majority of the people will just deploy with personal protective gear that includes gloves and masks and things like that. They don't need the whole suit as such because they're not going to be in contact with any of the people.
Dave Martin with CBS. Understanding your point about the ability of Liberia to absorb all this stuff, you have the feeling that if say the American embassy were under attack in Liberia, it wouldn't take the 101st Airborne weeks to get there. So what is it about this operation that makes it seem to be unrolling in a much slower pace than sending U.S. troops to protect Americans, for instance?
There's the protect the Americans piece is a small number. We already have about 5 times what we've sent in, for example, in Libya to protect the U.S. Embassy in that situation. And that infrastructure was there, as well as all the ability to sustain themselves. The other challenge out there in Liberia is, as you can imagine, their whole nation is overwhelmed. Their health facilities are overwhelmed. That's all broken down. So we have to bring in everything at the same time. And again, they right now the ETUs, for example, aren't even located all the locations where they want them. So those are some of the challenges that we're being faced with. That we just can't. We just don't want to overwhelm them and press things in there that they can't absorb at all. The airfield is the same way, for example. Okay.
Kate Brennan from Foreign Policy. Could you tell us how the decision was made to not have U.S. military medical personnel treat Ebola patients directly? And do you have any concerns about manning these Ebola treatment units on the ground? There's been calls from Doctors Without Borders that more people are needed, not necessarily more facilities, although both are needed. So if you could answer both of those, please.
I'm not so sure about how the decision was made, but the bottom line is that's the position right now of the leadership. It's the international community's role right now, and that's where everybody is encouraging people to come forward to do that, and that's where we stand until we move, to some future thing that they'll continue to relook the decision and continue to adapt to what's required on the ground. Again, we're filling in the demands that the international community needs us to do. That's for command and control. It's for engineering support. It's for logistics and those type of things, okay? So that's where we're focusing our effort, okay? And that's what they've asked us to.
Do you believe right now that there's a scenario that you can see that would push you past 3,900 or 4,000? And on the question of security there, do you think the concerns in Congress about the security of U.S. troops there, be it through just contamination risks or force protection in a situation where people are trying to get into an area that was off limits, do you think that those concerns are overblown?
I think that we have our service members, wherever they go, they have the ability to defend themselves and protect themselves, and they'll have that here. And I think that that will we'll meet that standard no matter where we go, anywhere in the world, and we're going to do that here too.
So what are the rules of engagement if it's a contaminated person who's unarmed?
We have the same rules of engagement we have everywhere we go. It's the standard chairman SecDef approved rules of engagement, and that's about protecting themselves and self-defense. But I want to make sure you also understand when these people get infected, And they are not capable of, doing a mounted attack or anything. When they're coming, the only ones that get into ETUs are the sickest ones because, just because of a capacity problem, and they don't have the ability to move or any of those things. So they have had zero problems that I know of in the Ebola treatment units right now, handling people at the gates with a very small element. Okay.
And on 4,000?
The 4,000, when you say, it depends how everything goes. I can't answer that question right now. But I don't foresee more than that right now, but things can change. This is a fastly changing situation. Again, we're still gaining situational understanding throughout the whole region, so I think that that will be the driving factor. Okay?
Phil Ewing with Politico. Can you please give us your latest estimate about how long it's going to take to get all the treatment centers and do the other work you need to do up and running? And can you give us a sense of how long large numbers of American troops are going to be on this mission and doing this deployment?
The treatment centers to get the ones that we have been tasked to build right now will probably take until mid-November right now. They are working on an effort over there to get more people to build some of those at different times, so we'll just have to see how it flexes out. We will probably would be able to continue to improve the speed with which we build them, because after you get one done, the second set goes faster, but that's the estimate right now to get all the 17 done. And what was the second question? I'm sorry.
How long are significant numbers of U.S. troops going to be doing this, do you think?
The real critical thing to this, based on USAID and the CDC, is to get about 70% of the personnel that are infected into a treatment facility, and then at that point they believe the curve will start going down, and then it will be based on how fast and how effectively, one, the curve turns down, and two, the international community can then pick up all the requirements. So we're going to stay as long as we're needed, but not longer than we're needed.
Do you have a sense if that's 6 months, a year, longer?
No, I do not at this point. I'm sure it'll be about a year, at this point, but that's just a guess. And again, we'll have to play that by ear, because it's all about the function of transmission rates and when that curve starts going down.
General Joe Tabit with Al-Hurra. Could you give us a sense about your cooperation with regional countries in West Africa? And do you think other countries other than Liberia are safe now from the Ebola outbreak?
No, as you know, both Sierra Leone and Guinea are also threatened by this. We are working for the military with both the French and the UK, who are also doing some things like putting the hospital up, like our 25-person hospital. But most of those efforts are being run and controlled by the United Nations and the international community. So we just, coordinate with them and communicate with them, but we don't direct them or anything.
Thank you. Thanks, General. Christina Wong from The Hill. About the cost, can you tell us where the $750 million is coming from? Is that coming from OCO out of the continuing resolution? And do you anticipate the Pentagon needing to request more money in 2015 for the response?
You'd have to ask the comptrollers for that, but the bottom line, it's a reprogramming effort, and I don't know where that's coming from, but they're working that on the Hill, and OSD policy is leading that effort, so they'd be the ones who could tell you exactly where it's coming from. Okay.
Do we have time for 2 more? Justin?
Thank you, General. I just wanted to clarify one thing. It is, in fact, troops and service members who will be operating these testing labs in the field, correct?
That's correct.
And so we've been told repeatedly up to this point from this podium that, in fact, service members are not going to come in contact with patients, and now we're being told that that's changing, which is a major change.
The labs are a separate specialty element of the force. So that's probably where that has come. As far as the general population, they won't be coming in contact. These are, like I said, these labs are trained to a specialty skill level 4, it's called, but the bottom line, it's the highest level. They can operate in a nuclear, biological, and chemical environment. They are specifically trained to do that, and that's their primary skill set. Okay, and we had one in there that has been operating for several years in the country that works on infectious diseases. We have both the Navy and the Army have medical labs in many countries doing just that, to monitor these things. okay?
And how many do you expect? How many troops will be running these labs?
As I mentioned, there'll be 3 or 4 per lab. It's a testing facility, okay? And they test it in a full-up biological suited up. I mean, these people, like I said, meet the highest level of standards of operating in that environment, okay?
Just a clarification on that, please. Will they be in contact with individuals or just specimens?
They come in contact with the individuals, and they do that. And they're, like I said, it's a very, very high standard that these people have operated in all their lives, and this is their primary skill. This is not just medical guys trained to do this. This is what they do for a living, sir.
And how many labs total would be?
There are 3 labs deployed right now and operating, and there's been a request for 4 more labs, and we're working to generate that right now because, as I mentioned, that's the testing really focuses who you need to treat and who you don't need to treat because, like I said, malaria shows a similar problem with the symptoms. So that they have already had a major impact, and the more the better for the effectiveness of the effort.
Last question, Richard.
General, when do you expect General Valesky to be on the ground, and why is he replacing General Williams?
The way that the command and control is set for the component for USARAF is that it has the ability to do small humanitarian things for a very short period of time, okay? And then that is, again, this is not a small effort, and it's not a short period of time. So then we'll get a headquarters from the United States out there to do that. And then General Williams also has a significant job doing lots of other things every single day that we need him working on in the rest of Africa. And that's the way the design structure of the command and control is set up.
Sir, when will General Valesky get there?
He'll be there in the next 3 weeks.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you, General.
Thank you.
Iraq and a united Iraqi National Guard that both empowers. Tomorrow, General Allen and Ambassador McGurk will meet with the King of Jordan and other Jordanian government officials. They will also travel tomorrow to Cairo and then will be in Ankara October 9th and 10th. And we'll have, of course, further readouts of their meetings there as the week continues. I'd also like to welcome our visitors in the back who join us today from Serbia as part of our, hello everyone, as part of a professional development program sponsored by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. This is a group of senior level public affairs officers for the recently elected government, and we're happy to have you here, of course. With that, Matt.
So sorry, I was distracted for a second. When did you say they were going to Cairo?
Tomorrow. They'll fly there
today?
tomorrow. They'll travel to Cairo tomorrow.
Okay. So looking ahead to their visit to Ankara, I'm wondering if you can update us on what the diplomacy has been, or if there has been any, in terms of trying or trying not to get the Kurds, I mean the Turks, involved in the Kobani situation.
Secretary Kerry spoke with Prime Minister Davutoglu last night, and again briefly this morning. Obviously, their conversation was broadly about the challenges we're all facing with the threat of ISIL, and also certainly the situation in Kobani. As I mentioned, General Allen and Ambassador McGurk will be there later this week, and I expect the conversation will continue when they're there.
Can you be a little bit more specific about what, what it was that they talked about as it relates to the situation in Kobani?
Well, I think there's certainly, it's horrific for everyone to watch in real time what's happening in Kobani, and they talked about that. But beyond that, I'm not going to get into other specifics. Certainly about, let me add a little bit more about the role, what the United States has been undertaking, what other Arab countries have been undertaking, and certainly a discussion about what role Turkey can play. But we're not going to discuss that publicly much further than that.
Well, I mean, are you satisfied with the current role that Turkey is playing?
Well, I think Turkey is determining what larger role they'll play broadly as a part of the coalition moving forward, and that conversation's ongoing.
And you would encourage them to play a larger role, what you just said.
I think they've indicated their openness to doing that, so there's an active conversation about that.
You would like to see that?
Certainly.
Did the Secretary, he didn't try to impersonate Vice President Biden, did he, on the phone call?
I think you are all familiar with the Secretary's long history and relationship, friendship, I should say, with the Prime Minister.
Did that subject come up at all?
Not that I'm aware of, Matt.
So also on Turkey, the Turkish president said bombing was not enough. So therefore, what other, if Turkey doesn't think the bombing enough, what steps should it be taking then to make sure that then, what it does is more effective?
Well, there are a couple of steps that are, let me just give you an update on the airstrikes. I know my colleague over at the Pentagon is also briefing today who will have more details, certainly, I would expect. We've undertaken multiple airstrikes in the Kobani area, including multiple strikes again last night. One airstrike south of Kobani destroyed 3 ISIL-armed vehicles and damaged another. Another strike southeast of Kobani destroyed an ISIL-armed vehicle carrying anti-aircraft artillery. 2 airstrikes southwest of Kobani damaged an ISIL tank. Another airstrike south of Kobani destroyed an ISIL unit. So just a brief update on that piece. There's also on the ground several individual opposition groups have formed de facto coalitions in some of these towns, including those near the Turkish border, and they're working together to push back and hold back to the degree they can ISIL and their efforts that have been underway on the ground. One other piece, and then we'll get to your next question. I think as it relates to this, as I mentioned earlier, it's obviously horrific to watch what's going on the ground, but it's important for the United States, for us, to also step back and remember our strategic objectives as it relates to our efforts and our engagement in Syria. As you all saw, the President laid out a clear and comprehensive strategy for degrading and ultimately destroying ISIL. Our goal is to deny ISIL a safe haven from which they can stage attacks in Iraq and possibly plan attacks against U.S. interests. And so our focus is on undertaking, militarily I should say, is undertaking a deliberate, well-thought-out campaign in Syria to disrupt ISIL, specifically their command and control structures, destroy ISIL's critical infrastructure, attack sources of ISIL fuel and financing. And you've seen militarily that those are that has been the focus of our actions to date.
Is Kobani not just an example that there are limits to just doing airstrikes, that perhaps, you know, boots on the ground by the Turks or anyone else is probably necessary in this case?
Well, nothing has changed about our view. I just think that's worth repeating in terms of the United States engagement. Obviously, we're having a discussion that's ongoing with Turkey about what role they may or may not be willing to play, and certainly how that works into the overall coalition efforts. Go ahead, Joe, and then we'll go to you. Go ahead.
You said that some of the local groups have formed together as a coalition. Are you in touch with them? Are you helping them practically on the ground?
Well, we're assisting them by doing the airstrikes that we have undergone over the past several days. And certainly we've seen that that has been useful, not only there, but in Iraq and other places where we've done them. Go ahead.
Just the previous question to follow up President Erdogan's remarks. He also stated that there needs to be ground operation and the airstrikes would not be enough. So my question is there any plan, besides this 5,000 Syrian opposition, is there any plan to organize or coordinate ground forces for Syria?
Well, certainly our train and equip program is not the totality of our assistance to the Syrian opposition. We have been providing a range of assistance that I still can't outline from here. We are working with other partners in the region to also provide different types of assistance and training, and certainly boosting up the opposition and increasing their military capabilities, their military credibility, we feel is not only important tactically, but also strategically as we look to how we're going to bring an end to this politically.
So besides the Syrian opposition you are training and equipping, there is no other work to organize ground troops. That's I want to make, because President Erdogan references that somehow there is some ground forces being
Well, the United
organized.
States, as you know, is not playing that role. We'll have a discussion with other countries about what role they may or may not be willing to play and what would be most effective as it relates to the coalition. Do we have any more in Turkey? Go ahead.
President Barzani of Kurdistan has asked, as news reports has said, has asked the Turkish president to send Peshmerga troops to Kobani. Are you aware of this request?
I have not seen that specifically. I'm happy to talk to our team about that. I think it's important for everyone to remember that there's still an ongoing fight happening in Iraq, one that we're very engaged in against ISIL. So I'd have to talk to them about whether tactically that's something we would advocate for.
And is there any update regarding the U.S. position towards creating a buffer zone and a no-fly zone in
Nothing
Syria?
has changed. It's still not an active part of our consideration.
And what's the U.S. position, or in principle, towards creating buffer zone and no-fly zone?
It's not. Nothing has changed since General Dempsey spoke to it about a week ago.
You said that the president had laid out a clear and comprehensive strategy for dealing with this. Is it not at all distressing to the administration that this clear and comprehensive strategy thus far has seen ISIL make gains rather than driving than retreat?
Well, in fact, I would disagree with that, Matt. There have been certainly gains made by the Iraqi security forces in Iraq. I can go through some of those for you if that would be useful. We've said from the beginning, and the president has said from the beginning, that this would be would not be overnight, that this would be a long-term effort. And certainly I outlined, as I just outlined, there are some strategic objectives that we're focused on. We've gone after refineries. We're going after strategic locations. And let me just tick through these, and then we can go to your next question. Some of our successes we've seen on the ground by the Iraqi security forces. One moment. Sorry. Well, I'll find these.
Okay.
Sorry, I wanted to
Does that
highlight
mean there
them.
aren't any?
That does not at all mean that, Matt. There have been the Iraqi security forces have pushed back and regained territory, and I just wanted to list through those, but I'll find them before we end the briefing. Go ahead.
Okay, but you say that, clearly it's this isn't going to be an overnight campaign, regardless of whether it's clear and comprehensive or not. But, you know, overnight, Kobani almost fell, and by tomorrow may be in ISIL's hands. And so I just don't know how. Is there not any concern at all that you're not doing, that the clear and comprehensive strategy the President has laid down is not, isn't working yet? Or
well, Matt, I think the reason why I outlined our objectives here and what our the deliberate and focused campaign is to outline and highlight the fact that it's been focused militarily on command and control structures, destroying ISIL's critical infrastructure, and attacking sources of ISIL's fuel and financing. And certainly, we're undergoing airstrikes in a range of places, including in the neighborhood.
The Turks said a couple days ago, various Turkish leaders said that they would not allow Kobani to fall, or that they would prevent it from falling. Is that, is this a strategic goal of the United States in this situation to keep Kobani out of ISIL's hands?
Well, certainly no one wants to see Kobani fall, but our primary objective here is preventing ISIL from gaining a safe haven, and we're going after those specific structures that I mentioned.
So does that mean that the administration believes that the fall, if Kobani falls, it wouldn't be a disaster? I mean, you could live with it?
Well, I'm certainly not saying that, Matt, but I'm saying that obviously our objectives and our focus strategically is on, as I outlined, command and control structures, oil refineries, and that's where we're taking our military action. But we would not have taken the range of military strikes we have taken, including overnight, if we did not want to support and defend the area. Let me just outline now the specific. Okay. So one, as we all know, and many of you reported, Kurdish forces, with the support of Sunni tribes, retook the Iraq-Syria border crossing at Rabia last week, which fell to ISIL in June. This is, of course, an encouraging development, as it will make it harder for ISIL to operate across the border. There were also reports within last week that Iraqi security forces working in conjunction with Sunni tribes have pushed back against ISIL in the town of Duluyai. I don't know how to say that name. I will have you all pronounce it as you report it. Go ahead.
I'll take your word for it. But they're also, you know, getting close to Baghdad.
Well, Matt, nothing is new about their focus on Baghdad, about their desire to go after Baghdad. And we've seen certainly they have been adjusting their tactics, as has the United States. But we also have been strengthening the resolve of the Iraqi security forces. They have taken additional actions to defend not only that area, but others, as I just outlined. And, you know, we don't feel that their desire to go after Baghdad is particularly new.
Well, but presumably, if you're not okay with ISIL taking Kobani, you're not okay with them even you wouldn't be okay with them even approaching Baghdad, right?
Well, Matt, I think it's clear that we've taken a range of actions in Iraq to push back on and go after.
The administration won't let Baghdad fall or be infiltrated.
I think we've been clear. We're going to do everything
and then
possible to defend.
Last one, and I realize this is probably.
Excuse me, on this one, why don't you say the same thing on Kobani?
I think I just outlined our tactics and our focus, and I'll leave it at that.
But it doesn't actually. Your tactics doesn't actually say that maintaining control of Kobani is a strategic objective at the moment in this ongoing campaign.
I think I'm going to leave it at what I outlined as our strategic goals in Syria.
So Kobani could be collateral damage.
That's not at all what I said. Go ahead.
But it's what you can infer from what you're saying. You're saying that your strategic goal at the moment is oil refineries and the financing and, you know, borders and things like that. It's not this town where 200,000 people have already fled.
Well, Joe, I would also remind you, as I did before, that we also have done a range of airstrikes in the neighborhood of Kobani, specifically to push back. But I think it's important also for people to understand what our objectives are.
But it does sound, though, as though you're not willing to, or that's not the right word. It sounds as though the defense of Kobani is not a super high priority.
Well, we wouldn't be taking airstrikes if we didn't want to take action in order to push back on the threat ISIL is posing.
So, Jen, do you think that the issue around Kobani can be resolved without the Turkish getting more involved? Is that an absolute requirement on this one to have that?
I'm just not in a position to give military analysis. Obviously,
well, I'm thinking more political.
Well, I think, but we're talking about tactically, militarily, whether they can. Obviously, we're having a discussion, as is evidenced by the Prime Minister's discussion with Secretary Kerry and the fact that Ambassador McGurk and General Allen are going there later this week. But certainly we also communicate with them via mill-to-mill channels as well.
And just on this rebel coalition, are they operating with the support of the US or with the Turks? Or
in what capacity?
Support, as in military support or any other support. I mean, are they? I mean, they haven't just come together and said, "Well, we're going to, you know, we're going to help free Kobani," right?
Well, I think they have been forming, opposition groups have been working together in the neighborhood. I'm not sure what you mean. Are we providing military assistance or what particular piece?
Yeah.
I mean, our position hasn't changed as it relates to who we are and aren't providing military assistance to. I can see if there's more we can convey on that specifically.
Okay. Did the Secretary say to the Prime Minister that if more needs to be done to try to save Kobani, that it's up to the Turkish government and the military to do it, because the President Obama has been adamant that ground forces from the U.S. would not be used in any part of this conflict?
I think I will leave it at how I read out the call, and it was more of a discussion about how we can work together and what role they're going to be able to play.
But it doesn't. But it sounds as if, you know, based on the reports coming out of the Turkish media, that there's this expectation on the part of the Turkish government that the U.S. ought to be doing more. And I'm wondering, how forcefully is the U.S. pushing back against this perception in its diplomatic conversations, not just in what the President is saying to the American public?
I'm just not going to read out private diplomatic conversations any further. Go ahead.
Without getting into the substance of the call, though, would it be correct to infer that 2 phone calls in 12 hours or something like that implies that there is a sense of urgency here?
Certainly, as is the fact that General Allen and Ambassador McGurk are heading there this week as well.
And have U.S. officials, on non-military officials, State Department officials, made the case to the Turks that Kobani is actually on their border, not ours, not the U.S. border, and they pose, ISIL taking it poses a more immediate threat to Turkey than to the United States?
Well, I think there's an understanding. I would
Do
point
they
you
get
to
it?
their public comments about the threat that
This is a
has been
country that
posed.
has the second largest army in NATO, and it's not doing anything.
We're in a discussion about what more that can be done.
All right,
More,
and then-
more can be done, I should
And then
say.
I realize this is probably better asked at the Pentagon
Mhm.
because they have the video and whatever, but when you went through that
They have
list.
all the toys.
Yes, wonderful toys. You went through that list of strikes,
Mhm.
what was destroyed, ISIL vehicles, armed vehicles, ISIL tanks. To the best of your knowledge, or do you know, were all of those vehicles and tanks made here?
I
Are
don't
they
have any
American?
details on the origin, Matt. I would point you to them.
Is it at
to
all
the data
problematic
department.
for this building that much of the equipment that you're destroying now is actually American?
Well, I think, one, Matt, obviously, when we understand that battle losses can do and will occur, and we take into account when we make arms transfers decisions in Iraq and around the world about that and factor that in. Obviously, we don't want to see equipment in the hands of terrorist organizations, but we certainly are aware of what happens on the battlefield. Go ahead.
You just talked about Turkish officials' public comments regarding urgency in Kobani. Just today, President Erdogan said Kobani either has fallen or is about to fall. Is this the remarks you're talking about regarding urgency, the public officials?
I don't have any. I think there have been a range of comments that have emphasized the recognition of the urgency of the situation. Do we have more on Turkey? Go ahead, Joe.
It was horrific to watch what was going on in Kobani, and yesterday you were asked if you could confirm the reports that ISIS have been moving into the town. I mean, are you in position now from the podium to be able to say what the U.S. Assessment of the situation on the ground in Kobani is?
I don't have any other military assessment from here. Obviously, as we know, there have been a range of television cameras and journalists who have certainly been broadcasting what's happening, but I don't have any other analysis to share from here.
And just to go back again on the question about your engagement with the Kurdish, what is the U.S. engagement with the Kurdish people inside Syria at the moment?
Are you talking about a specific group, or are you talking about a...
Well, I think generally, and then specifically, there was also, I don't know if you're aware of a report in Foreign Policy today about, so I wondered if you could give the reaction to that there's been secret talks going on between the United States and the PYD, which is actually an ally to the PKK.
I don't think that's exactly what it said. It said that we've not engaged directly, I mean, that we have engaged through intermediaries. Yeah. That's true. We have not engaged directly with the PYD for reasons that are well known. We, of course, as you know, broadly speaking, talk to a wide range of officials within the Syrian opposition throughout Syria, of course. But yes, we have spoken in the past through intermediaries.
And is the Kurdish, are the Kurdish groups key, do you think, to the fights both against ISIL and also long-term against Assad?
Well, I think we've seen, and you're talking about specifically the Kurdish groups in Syria.
Yeah.
Look, I think we've seen efforts to push back on the ground the threat from ISIL, and certainly there are certain parts of Syria, just as separately there are certain parts of Iraq where there's a broad presence. Certainly we think those efforts are important.
So what's happening in Kobani at the moment, does that presuppose that there could be more direct engagement between the United States and the PYD, which has been running Kobani?
Our policy hasn't changed in that regard. We continue to engage through intermediaries.
Can I just ask you on
Sure.
that report, the way it was characterized, secret talks, do you agree with that? I mean, it's been pretty well known for years that you've been dealing with all sorts of people in Syria, some directly, some through intermediaries. Would you agree with that characterization?
I probably wouldn't state it that way. Whether everybody was aware through intermediaries, I think, is a separate question. But do we have any more in Turkey?
Yeah, especially
okay.
U.S. special envoy to Syria is in Turkey. Do you have any readout for his meetings?
Daniel Rubinstein.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm happy to get you one after the briefing.
Okay. And what's the difference for you between Kobani and Baghdad in defending these two places?
I think they're different countries and different cities, and obviously, as you know, in Iraq, our airstrikes provide close air support for Iraqi security forces who are countering ISIL on the ground. We have a long partnership, obviously. The Iraqi government invited us in to play a role here, so they're entirely different circumstances and situations.
But in fighting ISIL, it's not the same, do you think?
I think I've answered it all I can. Go ahead.
One Syria, one Turkey. On Turkey, we have seen dozens of protests across Turkey now, mostly in southeast of Turkey, which is Kurdish cities. Do you have any comment on those protests? Or how do you assess those developments?
We do. I mean, certainly we, of course, as you know, broadly value freedom of expression, freedom of speech. We encourage people to do that peacefully and certainly encourage authorities to respect protests when they're done peacefully
These
as well.
protests called by PYD leader as well as PKK leaders just for Kobani rather than any other democratic demands, but these are for Kobani.
Okay, I don't have anything more to add.
One last one on Syria. Last week you were asked about whether after the U.S. strikes into Syria, some of the Syrian opposition groups, such as Al-Nusra Front or Ahrar al-Sham now, reports are coming out, that they are actually uniting with the ISIL groups against the U.S. strikes. So the argument goes U.S. strikes do more damage on the ground rather than to weaken the ISIL.
I think I answered this. I don't think I have anything new to what I said yesterday.
So you don't see any evidence that
I think I answered it yesterday. Go ahead, Nicola.
Can we move to another hotspot?
Let's just finish this and then we can go to you. Go ahead, Samir.
Do you know if the people of Kobani, the city of Kobani, are they supporters of the Assad regime or opponents?
I think, obviously there are a range of, and I don't have any analysis of that, to be honest. Go ahead.
Does the EU's criticism of the independence of Turkish courts in any way complicate the request from Turkey to participate in this international coalition?
I think for us even, Turkey is, of course, an incredibly important NATO ally. They're an important counterterrorism partner. There are times when we've spoken out about steps that have been taken regarding freedom of speech or freedom of the media, and the sign of a strong relationship is when you're able to do that, but I'll let the EU speak for themselves.
Ask one more question.
Sure.
Is there any concern that by letting Kobani fall, if it were to fall, that the Kurds would not continue to play the role that they are playing within the coalition and fighting ISIS in Iraq? And
well, I think clearly there are parts of Iraq, and certainly the work of the efforts that the Peshmerga have been undergoing, and they've continued to strengthen over time, are also for their survival of Iraq and the survival of their own communities. We're certainly supporting that, but ultimately it's for the Iraqi security forces working with the Peshmerga and the Kurds to have a long-term plan and a long-term strategy to keep terrorists at bay. And so it is not that they are fighting back to do a favor to the United States. It's to protect their own interests as well. Do we have any more on this issue, or should we? Okay, go ahead.
Is there a role here for Iran to play? Yesterday, Foreign Minister Zarif denounced the role certain countries were playing in Syria, saying it makes things more complicated. Specifically, he addressed the view that extremists and the Assad regime are two problems that would take care of each other. He said that this was an incorrect view that caused complications in Syria. Is there a role here that Iran can play?
We've spoken pretty extensively to this issue. The Secretary of State has and said there's a role for nearly every country to play. So that hasn't changed.
What about the general criticism that these airstrikes are somehow helping the Assad regime maintain its grip on power, something that you've obviously stated is not your policy? How do you address that view?
Well, first, we're undergoing military action and building this coalition because of the threat, if left unchecked, that ISIL could pose to the United States. And we have to worry about and focus on our own interests as well. The second is ISIL was growing in not only in the region, but certainly the safe haven was gaining strength in Syria. And for several years now, the opposition has been fighting ISIL. The regime has been kind of turning a blind eye to that. So we had to address both what's in the interest of the United States, what's in the interest of the region, and certainly a number of our programs, including the Train and Equip program and the aid and assistance we're providing to the opposition, it can also be used to fight against the Assad regime. And certainly we believe that strengthening the credibility, the military capability of the opposition will help them politically as it comes to working through a conclusion here.
Sorry, I just have one more on Syria that's unrelated to this. For the last year, the administration has held up the agreement that it reached with the Russians on Syria's chemical weapons facilities as a big success. It now emerges that Syria has declared another 4 chemical weapons facilities. And I'm just wondering, in light of that, was this such a success after all? It certainly did get rid of some, or even one could argue a lot, of the chemical weapons that they had, but it clearly wasn't all. They clearly lied or hid some facilities. So what does that say about the agreement?
Well, Matt, without this agreement, the great large amount of chemical weapons that were in many locations across Syria would still be in Syria, and there would be an availability to the regime to use those chemical weapons against their own people. And we have always said that part of this and part of the agreement originally was joining the Chemical Weapons Convention so that it would not just be resolved when we removed all declared chemical weapons, which we have done, but there would be continued checks on what Syria still has or may not have still in the country. So I think without this agreement, all of those chemical weapons that were removed through a cooperative effort by many countries in the international community would still be there, and I don't see how that's a better option.
Okay, well, do you have any reaction to the declaration of 4 additional ones, just on its face?
Are you referring to the briefing that happened
Yes,
up at
at the
the USUN today? I know that they've spoken to this up there. Obviously, the Secretary put out a statement just a week or so ago about our ongoing concerns and efforts to look into this and our support for the OPCW. But
Long haul said that Assad has lost credibility and has to go. But I'm just wondering, I mean, given this and this latest admission, is there any reason to think that they will negotiate Assad or his people in good faith? Because clearly they didn't join the OPCW in good faith, and they didn't do what they were supposed to do in good faith.
well, this has never been about trust, and certainly that's why we have to boost up the opposition and empower them and increase their strength so that they can pose a viable alternative here. Go ahead. Oh, are we done with this issue? Okay. Sure. Oh, okay. Sorry. Can we? Well, if it's a separate issue, let's go to Nicola in the front, and then we'll go to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's on Ukraine. Could you provide a readout of the meeting Assistant Secretary Victoria Nuland had with President Poroshenko? Apparently, they had extensive conversation about economic aid and security at the Russian border.
Sure. Well, Assistant Secretary Nuland is in Kiev this week from October 6th through 8th to reaffirm the United States' commitment to Ukraine's territorial integrity, a peaceful resolution to the conflict in eastern Ukraine, and ongoing reform efforts, including today's historic votes to move forward new anti-corruption laws. She's already met with President Poroshenko, as you mentioned, Prime Minister Yatsenyuk, and members of various political parties and civil society. Earlier today, she gave a speech to students where she spoke about those Ukrainians who inspired the world during the Maidan protest. She also acknowledged the immense sacrifices of the Ukrainian people, thousands of whom died while fighting for their sovereignty and freedom in eastern Ukraine. She noted that the Ukrainian government has fulfilled its commitments under the September 5th Minsk Agreement and called on Russia and Russian-backed separatists to fulfill their own commitments, including by ending the ceasefire violations, restoring Ukrainian control to its side of the international border, withdrawing all foreign forces and equipment, and returning all hostages. And certainly, as you said, the economic prosperity of Ukraine and issues like their access to gas and their need to be well supplied for the winter are certainly issues that we continue to discuss with Ukraine at a variety of levels, not just through Assistant Secretary Nuland, but certainly through a variety of experts within the State Department and other bodies in the administration. Go ahead,
Do you
Joe.
think you're coming to any kind of conclusion about how to meet those gas needs? I mean, that is a gaping hole at the moment, and it's already mid-October. It's already getting cold there.
Well, this has been, obviously, as you know, an ongoing discussion. It's one where our Assistant Secretary Amos Hochstein has been very involved. A number of officials in the administration have been very involved. We, too, want to see this resolved and certainly recognize the seasonal changes that are approaching here. I don't have any update for you, unfortunately, Joe, but just something that is a priority and that we're working closely to see how we can assist.
Freezing outside.
You grew up in Buffalo.
Yeah,
You're a little tougher.
Ukraine. Did Assistant Secretary Nuland, I saw some report, I just want to know if it's true. Did she tell Poroshenko that the spots that were in the Flex program that the Russians suspended would go to Ukrainian students? Do you know?
I saw the report. I'd have to check on the specifics of the Flex program. That's my understanding that we will be, of course, utilizing those spots, but I would have to check on the details.
They weren't Russia specific. They're just spots.
Well, they certainly originally were, but
I know, but they can be moved around without any.
That's my understanding. But why don't we check and see kind of what will be done with the spots if that's useful to you? Go ahead.
To ISIS in Syria. Jim Foley's parents went on British radio this morning and said that the US government hadn't done enough to negotiate their son's release, and maybe paying a ransom was appropriate. I wonder what you'd say to them.
Well, I would say first that we can't imagine the pain and the heartache that Jim Foley's parents have been going through. And that's something I don't think anyone can understand unless they've unfortunately been faced with similar challenges. The United States government was involved and closely involved at a range from a range of departments working with the family. Our United States policy of not paying ransoms is in place because we think if we did, it would further put Westerners at risk. And that's not something we don't want to make more Westerners targets. And that's the reason we have that ongoing policy. But the fact is, as you know, we underwent a rescue operation that unfortunately wasn't successful this summer. And this is doing everything we can to see the safe return of individuals who are still being held is a primary focus of not just our department, but individuals across the government.
And do you try to follow up with those other European countries that apparently do pay ransoms?
Do we follow up with them?
Well, do you try to persuade them not to?
I think our policy is well known. There are a number of other governments who have a similar policy, some don't. We certainly explain why our policy is as it is. Go ahead.
Mexico? Okay, sorry, we're going, can I just, Russia?
Sure, Russia, and then we'll go to Mexico. Does that work? Okay, go ahead, Joe.
It's President Putin's 62nd birthday today. Wondered if you wanted to take the occasion to wish him happy birthday from the podium. But more seriously, he was given, as one of his presents, an art exhibit called The 12 Labours of Hercules, which shows him with in a toga armed with a sword taking over the Crimea. I wondered if there was any kind of US reaction to that.
Well, I have not had time to take a look at the art exhibit, Joe, so I don't know that I have much of a comment on that, other than the fact that we continue to believe that that was an illegal intervention, and certainly we don't celebrate that here. I will also note on his birthday, it is also Desmond Tutu's birthday. It's also Yo-Yo Ma's birthday, so we celebrate the birth of all born today.
Yo-Yo, Putin.
Mm-hmm. There's more. I could keep going.
Do any of them other ones have repetitive phrases in them, like yo-yo and tutu?
That's true. I didn't even notice that. Just a little alliteration there for you. Go ahead.
I just wonder if you have any comments with regard to the recent massacres committed in the state of Guerrero by the police, the state police, and what the government is doing about it, trying to cover up some incidents and trying to be quiet in order to stop the criticism over the President Enrique Peña Nieto?
Well, we have been following reports from Guerrero on the troubling disappearance of up to 43 students, as well as reports over the weekend that authorities in Guerrero were investigating a mass grave near Iguala. Our thoughts and sympathies are with families and friends of those missing. This is a troubling crime that demands a full, transparent investigation, and the perpetrators must be brought to justice. We understand that Mexican authorities have begun an investigation, so we'd certainly refer you to them otherwise for more information on the investigation.
But the office of Senator Patrick Leahy has just told that he asked the State Department to investigate if some of those police members and Mexican military who killed people in Tlatlaya were trained by the U.S. under the Merida Initiative, and if some arms has been used in those crimes. When you're going to respond to Senator Leahy?
Did he send us a letter, or do you
I don't know. His office just said he already asked the State Department to provide this information to him.
I'm happy to look into that. If he sent us a letter, we typically reply to that in kind, so why don't I check on that and see. Obviously, there's an investigation that Mexican authorities are undergoing at this point.
And another thing, why the U.S. government keeps kind of quiet with the massacre in Tlatlaya occurred in June 30. And it was 3 months after that when the State Department made a comment. And I used to come every day to this briefing, and I remember when somebody killed someone in Mexico, immediately it was a reaction by the U.S. government. Why, in this case, not?
On this particular case?
Talking about Tlatlaya in the state of Mexico.
I'd have to check and see if we put out a statement or made a comment. Oftentimes it's in response to questions, so we can check on that for you.
Lebanon?
Okay.
Do you have anything on the tension between Lebanon and Israel, especially after some military actions today between Hezbollah and Israel?
Sure, one moment. I can just do a few more here because Ambassador Bass is being confirmed, so I just don't want to miss that.
Get to Turkey too.
He will soon be in Turkey as well. Lots of people in Turkey. So you were asking, I think, about, sorry, say your question one more time.
The tension on the border between Lebanon and Israel after a military operation made by Hezbollah against Israeli troops.
We've certainly seen that. I have some comments on it. I just have to get it to you after the briefing.
I have one
go ahead.
on follow-up on your question answer yesterday on India-Pakistan. You talked about LOC and your concerns. Is the U.S. in touch with either India and Pakistan to calm down the situation along the LOC?
We have large embassy presences in both countries, so I'm certain we're in touch and we encourage ongoing dialogue, but I don't have anything new to read out for you.
But not from this building, right?
I don't have any new calls to read out from you from the secretary or anyone else at this point, no.
I've got three that will be extremely brief.
Okay, and
One,
then
do you
we'll
know
go to
anything
Michelle.
about this the explosion in Parchin?
I don't know that I have anything new, Matt, but let me see if I have anything to convey to you.
Second, yesterday evening, I think, or early afternoon, or late afternoon, you put out a statement about the Huang case.
We did, and actually I meant to flag that at the beginning because I know we put it out late last night.
Yeah, why, what was the occasion for this, and why now, or why is it only now that you're calling on the Qataris to allow them to return to the States?
Well, I think, one, this is an issue that we have discussed and we recently discussed with the Qataris, and so certainly we just felt it was appropriate to remind people of this particular case. Let me just see if there's anything.
Do you know if there was a specific reason? I realize the appeal is coming up on the 20th.
Yeah, the next hearing date is set for October 20th, so that's in, let's see, about 2 weeks.
Right, but this has been going on for some time.
You're correct.
Why is it now only that you're telling the Qataris, or at least making it public, that you want the Qataris to let them go?
I believe we've spoken to this in the past, Matt, but we just wanted to raise awareness for this issue and make sure we highlighted it for people.
And nearby in Bahrain, the case of this rights activist who was arrested for tweets is still going on. I'm wondering what if you have anything new to say about that, and if you know whether there will be any diplomatic presence at his hearings, if that's being allowed.
I don't have anything new to offer. I can check and see if we'll have a presence there from our consular office. Sure. Let's just do two more here. Go ahead, Michelle, and then we're going to...
Ebola, if Thomas Duncan survives, will the U.S. send him back to Liberia to face prosecution?
To face prosecution?
For the Liberian officials had said that they would prosecute him for getting on the plane and lying about the questionnaire, saying that he had Ebola or had been in touch with someone with Ebola. And so I'm wondering, would he in fact face extradition for that if he ends up surviving?
Well, broadly speaking, as you know, we don't talk about extradition. I'm not aware of any plans to do that, no, though.
Okay.
Two very quick one on Burma or Myanmar, depending on who is speaking. They have decided to free 3,000 prisoners, including former intelligence military figures. Is it a good thing? Is it a sign of goodwill before the visit of President Obama in November?
Well, we welcome reports that the government of Burma has released a number of prisoners during with amnesty, I should say, today. We don't have all of the details yet on those who have been released. We urge the government to continue to work expeditiously through the Political Prisoner Review Committee to release all political prisoners unconditionally and to remove conditions placed on those already released. So since reform has passed, or began, I should say, approximately 1,300 political prisoners have been freed. While most recognized political prisoners have been released, an estimated 30 to 40 more remain incarcerated. And the Political Prisoner Review Committee was established in 2013 to discuss this, and certainly we're encouraging them to continue to move forward.
One last one on Haiti. Yesterday you had a reaction about the death of Jean-Claude Duvalier. Since then it seems that the election, which were already long delayed, might be postponed again. So is the Secretary planning to phone again President Martelly? And if the elections are postponed, who would be to blame? Is it President Martelly or the opposition, which is dragging its feet to implement the electoral reforms?
Well, I'm not aware of another call planned. Haiti and the issue of working with on this diplomatically falls under our counselor, Tom Shannon. So he'll continue to be certainly engaged in this issue. I'm so sure we can keep you abreast if there's any call planned in the future. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.